The curse strikes again. For the third consecutive year, tennis sensation Coco Gauff has been absolutely demolished at the Qatar Tennis Open in Doha, losing in straight sets and extending one of the most baffling losing streaks in professional tennis. This time, the American star fell to Italian lucky loser Elisa Beto Cocciaretto in a match that had fans around the world screaming at their screens and questioning everything they thought they knew about the young superstar's game. What happened in the desert of Doha wasn't just a loss. It was a complete breakdown, a systematic dismantling that exposed cracks in Gauff's game that seemed to grow wider every time she steps onto Middle Eastern soil. The scoreline read 6-4, 6-2, but those numbers don't tell the full story of a match where America's Golden Girl looked anything but golden, where her usually reliable weapons turned into liabilities, and where a player ranked 57th in the world made the fourth seed look completely out of her depth. Let's rewind to understand just how stunning this collapse really was. Going into this match, Coco Gauff had never lost a single set to Cocciaretto. Not one. They'd played 3 times before, and each time Gauff had walked away victorious without dropping a set. The history, the rankings, the form, everything pointed to a routine Gauff victory. But tennis, as we're constantly reminded, is played on the court, not on paper. And what unfolded in Qatar was a masterclass in how mental blocks and technical breakdowns can turn a sure thing into a disaster. From the very first ball, something was off. Gauff's footwork, usually one of her greatest strengths, looked sluggish and imprecise. Her positioning was wrong, her timing was off, and her decision-making seemed clouded by doubt. The forehand, that weapon that has won her so many matches and carried her to Grand Slam glory, was misfiring spectacularly. We're not talking about a few errors here and there. We're talking about wild misses, balls sailing long by meters, shots into the net that should have been routine winners. 39 unforced errors piled up like a car crash in slow motion, and the vast majority came off that forehand wing. But here's where it gets really interesting, where the psychology of this defeat becomes absolutely fascinating. Cocciaretto isn't a big server. She didn't hit a single ace in the entire match. 0. And Coco Gauff is supposed to be one of the best returners on tour, someone who can break down serves and turn defensive positions into offensive opportunities. So you'd expect, with all that in her favor, that Gauff would create multiple breakpoint chances and convert at least a few of them. Instead, she managed to break serve exactly 1 time in the entire match. 1 solitary break in the opening set, and then nothing. She had opportunities, sure. A breakpoint at 3-4 in the first set, another at 5-4. But when the moments came, when the pressure was on, Gauff blinked. That second breakpoint opportunity in the first set, serving at 4-5, tells you everything you need to know about how this match went. Gauff had a chance to level the set, to shift the momentum, to grab control. She went for a backhand approach shot, a bread-and-butter play that she's executed thousands of times in her career. But her feet were wrong. She mistepped. The shot didn't have the placement it needed, and Cocciaretto crushed a passing shot winner down the line. Game over. Set over. And psychologically, maybe the match was over right there too. The second set was even more painful to watch. Gauff actually showed some fight early, facing 3 breakpoints at love 40 while serving at 1-3. This is where champions are made, right? This is where the great ones dig deep and find something extra. And for a brief shining moment, Gauff looked like she'd found it. She stepped into her forehand with real aggression, transferring her body weight forward the way her coaches have been begging her to do. 3 consecutive forehand winners. Clean, powerful, purposeful. The crowd came alive. Gauff's team on the sidelines started believing again. Deuce. She'd done it. She'd saved 3 breakpoints and given herself a chance to hold. And then it all fell apart again. A double fault, her third of the match. Then a backhand unforced error that seemed to come from nowhere, flying long as if Gauff had lost all sense of the court dimensions. Double break. Down 1-4 in the second set. The match was effectively over even though there was still tennis to be played. Cocciaretto wasn't about to let this opportunity slip away. She'd already beaten a top 5 player before. taking down Jessica Pegula in the first round at a tournament last year, so she knew she belonged on this stage. She kept her cool, kept executing her game plan, and watched as Gauff continued to self-destruct. What made this loss even more frustrating for Gauff and her legion of fans was the tactical approach that seemed to abandon one of her most effective weapons. Gauff has this heavy, angled cross-court forehand that she uses to devastating effect against most opponents. It's spinny, it kicks up, it pushes opponents off the court and opens up the whole court for her to attack. But in this match, she barely used it at all. Maybe she didn't have confidence in the shot on this particular day. Maybe the conditions in Doha, which can be slower and heavier than other tournaments, made that shot less effective. Or maybe, and this is the most concerning possibility, Gauff just wasn't thinking clearly enough to access her full arsenal. After the match, Gauff met with reporters in the mixed zone, and her comments revealed a player who's deeply frustrated and searching for answers. She talked about the impossible balance she was trying to strike, saying that when she tried to be more aggressive, she hit more unforced errors, but when she tried to be more passive and play with more shape on her shots, Caucheretto would take the ball early and crush it. It's a classic tennis catch-22, the kind that can drive players crazy when they're not in form. Gauff tried to go into what she calls lockdown mode, using her superior athleticism and court coverage to force errors from her opponent. But it didn't work. Caucheretto, like an increasing number of players on tour, has figured out the formula for beating Gauff. That formula goes something like this. Take those high, spinny forehands that Gauff loves to hit, especially to the backhand side, and instead of getting pushed back and playing defensively, step in and take the ball early with an aggressive shot. Suddenly, Gauff is the one on defense. Suddenly, she's the one running and scrambling. Players with good, reliable backhands like Madison Keys, Yulia Putintseva, and now Caucheretto have shown they can exploit this pattern in Gauff's game. It's not a secret anymore. The blueprint is out there, and more players are studying it and executing it successfully. This brings us to the bigger, more troubling pattern that has Gauff fans genuinely worried. Look at her record in Doha specifically and the Middle East swing generally, and you'll see a player who seems cursed by the desert. Gauff hasn't won a set in Doha since 2023. Read that again. 3 years of playing this tournament, and she hasn't won a single set in the last 2 editions. This year she lost in straight sets to a lucky loser. Last year she lost in straight sets in another early round. The year before, same story. It's gotten so bad that after today's loss, social media exploded with fans demanding that Gauff skip Doha entirely in the future, that she abandon the Middle East swing altogether and use that time to train and work on her game. And you know what? It's hard to argue with that logic when you look at the numbers. Gauff is a confidence-based player, someone who plays her best tennis when she's feeling good about herself and her game. She has specific pockets of the season where she absolutely dominates. The United Cup at the start of the year, where she feeds off team energy and national pride. The clay court swing, where the slower surface gives her time to use her speed and build points. The Asian swing in the fall, where she's had some of her best results. But the Middle East, it's like kryptonite for her game. She comes in with low expectations, she plays tentatively, and the results are predictably terrible. The mental aspect of this cannot be overstated. Gauff actually came into this tournament with virtually no pressure on her in terms of ranking points. She barely had any points to defend from previous years in Doha. You'd think that would free her up to play loose, to swing freely, to go for her shots without fear. But the opposite happened. She came out tight, frustrated with her team before things even got bad, and carrying a defeated demeanor that observers noticed from the warm-up onwards. When you expect to fail, you usually do. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy, and Gauff seems trapped in it when she plays in Qatar. There's another element to this that makes it even more perplexing. Gauff can practice brilliantly. Her coaches rave about how good she looks in training sessions. She can play doubles and look like a world beater. But when the pressure ramps up in singles, when the stakes are highest and the spotlight is brightest, she tends to fold. It's been a pattern throughout her career, this gap between practice performance and match performance, and it suggests that the issue isn't physical or technical as much as it is mental. The talent is there, the shots are there, but the ability to execute them when it matters most, especially in environments where she's previously struggled, that's where the breakdown occurs. The irony of today's loss is that Gauff actually served pretty well. Only 3 double faults in the entire match, which for her is actually solid. Her serve has been a major weakness at times, with matches where she's hit 15 or 20 double faults and basically served herself out of contention. But today, the serve was fine. It was the ground game, specifically the forehand, that let her down catastrophically. This is what's so maddening about Gauff's current form. Nothing ever clicks all at the same time. When the serve is working, the forehand breaks down. Sure. When the forehand is firing, the serve falls apart. When both are good, the mental game or the tactical decisions let her down. She needs all the pieces to come together simultaneously, and right now, that's just not happening with any consistency. Let's talk about what this loss means in the broader context of the tournament and the WTA Tour. Gauff will actually rise from number 6 back to number 4 in the world rankings, despite this early exit, which shows you how weird the point situation is right now. But here's the thing. She has a massive amount of points to defend coming up during the clay court season. She had great results on clay last year, and if she doesn't replicate them this year, she could see her ranking tumble significantly. This Doha tournament was a golden opportunity to bank some points, to build some momentum, to get match tough before the clay swing begins. Instead, it was another wasted opportunity, another early exit, another dent in her confidence, and the draw had opened up beautifully for her too. The highest-ranked player Gauff would have faced before the semifinals was number 24 in the world, Jelena Ostapenko. Now, Ostapenko is in good form right now, having just dismantled 8th seed Ekaterina Alexandrova 6-4, 6-2, so she wouldn't have been an easy out. But still, this was a very manageable path to the late rounds of a prestigious tournament. Gauff should have been looking at this draw and licking her chops. Instead, she's packing her bags and heading home, probably replaying those forehand errors in her mind for the next week. Meanwhile, Cocciaretto moves on to face Ostapenko in what should be a fascinating match between two aggressive ball strikers who aren't afraid to go for their shots. The Italian is a hot and cold player, capable of beating anyone on her day, but also liable to lose to someone ranked outside the top 90 on her bad days. She won a title in Hobart earlier this year, beating Eva Leis in the final, but then lost in the first round of the Australian Open to a player ranked in the 90s. She even lost in qualifying here in Doha, winning only 3 games against Varvara Gracheva. But she got a lucky loser entry when McCartney Kessler withdrew, and she's made the most of that second chance. This is her second top 5 win in her career, and you have to give her credit for stepping up and playing the match of her life when it mattered. The rest of the Doha draw is shaping up in interesting ways. It's kind of wild that Peyton Stearns, ranked 41st in the world, is now the only American remaining in the tournament. That tells you everything about how poorly the American women have performed this week. In the lower half of the draw, we've got a rematch of the Adelaide final between Mira Andreeva and Diana Schneider. Schneider won that Adelaide final 6-3, 6-1, absolutely dominating the younger Russian, but Andreeva was physically compromised in that match after playing so many matches that week. This time should be much more competitive. Australian Open champion Aryna Sabalenka is absolutely rolling right now, having won 21 of her last 22 matches. She took down the dangerous Chinese player Qinwen Zheng, 6-2, 6-4 in a match that was tougher than the scoreline suggests. Sabalenka was actually down 2-4 in the second set and faced a break point that would have put her down a double break. But this is why she's the Australian Open champion and one of the most mentally tough players on tour. She dug herself out of that hole, won 6 of the next 7 games, and closed out the match with authority. Up next for Sabalenka is another Chinese player, but this one is the big challenge, Zheng Qinwen, who continued her comeback with a solid 7-6, 6-3, 6-2 win over Sloane Stephens. Zheng faced 2 set points in that opening set against Stephens, but found a way to survive and advance. Sabalenka leads the head-to-head 2-1, with Zheng winning their last meeting at the 2024 WTA Finals in the round-robin stage. But that was a different Sabalenka, a player who hadn't yet won the Australian Open, and found that extra gear that champions need. The smart money is on Sabalenka to win this time, and continue her march toward what could be her 4th Doha title. And speaking of Doha dominance, let's talk about the woman who might be the biggest favorite we've seen in this tournament in years. Iga Swiatek, the three-time Doha champion, got her campaign started with an absolutely ruthless 6-love, 6-3 destruction of Jacqueline Christian. Swiatek told Sky Sports that she's been working more on her serve, especially after losing to Sabalenka in the Australian Open quarterfinal, and the serve looked absolutely dialed in during this match. She won more than 70% of both her first and second serve points, which is elite-level serving. When Swiatek is serving that well, combined with her baseline dominance and mental strength, she's almost unbeatable. Looking at Swiatek's section of the draw, it's hard to see anyone stopping her from reaching the final. She handles business against non-top 10 players with ruthless efficiency, and she hasn't lost more than 3 games in a single set in her last 6 matches against her next opponent, Daria Kasatkina. Kasatkina did take a set from Swiatek in Cincinnati back in 2024, but expecting an upset there would be wildly optimistic. Maria Sakkari looked good in her win over Martina Trevisan, taking it 4-2, but Sakkari hasn't won a set against Swiatek since 2022. The mental block is real. In the bottom half of Swiatek's section, we've got a clash between 2 Czech players, Karolina Muchova and Karolina Pliskova, which should be an interesting contrast in styles. Below that, Yulia Putintseva, who's now 11-1 on the year and looking like she's finally putting together the consistency that her talent has always promised, takes on Anna Kalinskaya, who just eliminated Emma Navarro 7-5, 6-2. And speaking of Navarro, her struggles continue. She's now 3-5 in 2026, which is a shockingly poor start for a player who had such a breakthrough year in 2025. She's got 500 ranking points to defend when she tries to defend her Merida title in a couple of weeks, and if this form continues, those points are going to vanish and her ranking is going to plummet. Over on the men's side at the Rotterdam 500, the top seed Alexander Zverev got his campaign underway with a solid 7-6, 6-2 victory over Archer Fils. The young Frenchman is on the comeback trail after injury and played well enough to push the first set to a tiebreak, but Zverev's experience and consistency proved too much in the end. Another young Frenchman, Giovanni Mpetshi Pericard, also bit the dust, losing to 7th seed Talon Griekspoor 4-4. Mpetshi Pericard recently split with his longtime coach Emmanuel Plunk, and you have to wonder if that's contributing to his current struggles. He reached a career-high ranking of 29 in the world around this time last year, but has now slipped to 56th. In Dallas, there was a significant upset as top seed Lerner Tien fell to veteran Marine Cilic 7-5, 7-6. It was a gutsy effort from Tien, who came back from 3-5 down in the second set and saved 2 match points, but Cilic's firepower and experience got him over the line in the end. Big respect to Cilic, who at 37 years old became the second active ATP player to notch 600 tour-level wins with this victory. That's a remarkable achievement and a testament to his longevity and consistency at the highest level of the sport. So where does all this leave us? Coco Gauff is heading home from Doha once again with nothing to show for her efforts except more questions about her game, her mental approach, and her relationship with this particular tournament. The debate is now raging in the tennis community about whether she should simply skip Doha in future years, whether avoiding this tournament where she has such a terrible record would be addition by subtraction. On one hand, you can understand the logic. Why keep doing the same thing and expecting different results? Why subject yourself to the mental torture of another inevitable early exit? Why not use that time to train, to work with coaches on the technical and tactical issues that keep cropping up, to arrive at the next tournament fresh and confident rather than beaten down and doubting yourself? On the other hand, Gauff is still only in her early 20s. This is not the time in her career to start picking and choosing which prestigious tournaments to play. The ranking points are important, yes, but so is the experience of playing matches, of figuring out how to overcome mental blocks, of learning to win in environments where you've previously struggled. Champions don't run away from challenges. They face them head-on and find a way to conquer them. If Gauff skips Doha now, what message does that send? That when things get tough, when a particular tournament or surface or condition doesn't suit her, she'll just avoid it. That's not how you build a Hall of Fame career. The real question is whether Gauff and her team can figure out what's going wrong and fix it. The talent is obviously there. You don't win a Grand Slam and reach number 2 in the world without having elite-level ability. But something is broken right now. Some combination of technical flaws and tactical predictability and mental fragility that keeps producing these ugly losses to players she should be beating comfortably. The forehand needs serious work. The defensive patterns need to be redesigned because opponents have figured out how to exploit them. And most importantly, the mental game needs shoring up so that Gauff can access her best tennis when the pressure is on, not just in practice or when things are going well.